Have you ever stopped to think that the words you use don't just express your thoughts, but they might actually build them? Today, we're going to dive into that powerful, often invisible connection between our language and the very architecture of our minds. Let's get into it.
You know that feeling, right? You're watching a debate, maybe scrolling through social media, and it's just exhausting. Everybody's talking past each other, things get louder, more emotional, but nothing actually gets any clearer. It feels like we're just generating a ton of heat with zero light. Well, what if the root of that problem isn't just that we disagree, but it's the actual language we're using to argue in the first place? And this brings us to a really mind-bending idea from our source material. Thought does not exist independently of language. Just let that sink in for a second. The idea isn't that we have a thought and then we go looking for the words to describe it. No, the idea is that we think through our words. Language isn't just a bucket to hold our thoughts, it's the very toolkit we use to construct them. And if that toolkit is limited, well, so is our thinking. So, this leads us to what our source calls a crisis of language. But hold on, because this crisis isn't what you probably think. It's not about speaking too many or too few languages. It's a much deeper problem the author calls linguistic insecurity. Okay, so what is linguistic insecurity, really? Imagine you use a couple of languages every day, maybe even 3, but you've never truly deeply mastered any single one of them. You can get by, for sure, but you don't have that rich, precise vocabulary to build a really complex argument. The result isn't some wonderfully multilingual mind. It's actually a fragmentation of your ability to think and express yourself with any real clarity. So, how does this actually play out in the real world? Well, the source material takes a close look at modern India to diagnose this condition it calls thought without mastery, and it results in something called a double loss. This double loss is like a lose-lose situation. See, on one hand, you've got English. It's the language of opportunity, of status, but for many, it's learned just well enough to pass an exam, not well enough to really reason with precision. We mistake fluency for genuine competence. Then, on the other hand, you have local Indian languages. They're often seen as less important in higher education, so they haven't really developed the vocabulary for modern technical debates. So you're stuck, right? English without real depth, and native languages without modern authority. And what this creates is a real fragmentation in a person's life. Think about it. Someone might speak one language with their family, another one at school, and be trying to use a third for their career. Each language is kind of stuck in its own silo, and none of them ever becomes that fully equipped workshop where deep, original thinking can really flourish. And this problem gets baked right into the education system. When students are taught to just memorize and spit back essays, definitions, and phrases to pass their exams, they're not just learning language in a mechanical way. They're literally being trained to think mechanically. Original ideas become risky. The safe bet, the way to succeed, is to just reproduce thoughts that already exist. So, what happens when our words fail us? When you feel something so strongly, but you just can't find the words to articulate it? Well, that's when things get heated. As the source argues, when words fail, emotion floods in to fill the gaps. And it's this incredibly powerful chain reaction. It all starts with that struggle to explain a complex idea. That inability to express yourself creates a vacuum, and pure emotion just rushes in. Frustration quickly hardens into anger, which then becomes a substitute for a real, reasoned argument. And before you know it, outrage is standing in for a clear explanation. Discussions don't just escalate because we disagree. They escalate because of the raw frustration of not being able to make ourselves understood. This leads to a really crucial insight. Shallow language produces brittle thinking. So what does that even mean, brittle thinking? It means our opinions become rigid. We can't handle nuance. We cling to these simple black and white certainties. Because exploring doubt or complexity requires a level of linguistic confidence that just isn't there. A disagreement feels like a personal attack because our ideas aren't sitting on a strong foundation of reason. And our modern systems, well, they often just make this whole situation worse. In school and at work, what do we reward? Getting the answer fast, not reflecting on it. Getting the correct answer, not coming up with a clear, original idea. Conforming, not taking the risk of standing out. This kind of environment actively discourages the deep, clear thinking we so desperately need. Okay, but this isn't an unsolvable problem. The source suggests we can adopt what it calls a repair lens, the idea being that to strengthen our thinking, we first have to fix our language. You know, other cultures actually offer a different way of doing things. In Germany, for example, education demands extreme precision in language.
It's not just about good grammar. It's treated as an intellectual discipline that leads directly to precision in thought. And in France, argumentation is taught as a core civic skill. Students learn how to build a case and critique others constructively, so disagreement isn't a fight. It's a normal, productive part of public life. So, what are the big takeaways we can adapt from this? First, and this is huge, prioritize mastery in one language over being just okay in many. Second, we need to start treating writing not as a way to just record thoughts, but as the very tool we use to create them. We also have to explicitly teach skills like logic and argumentation. And finally, we have to invest in developing local languages so they can be used for modern scholarship, breaking that total dependence on English. If you remember one thing, let it be this. Deep, strong thinking in one mastered language is infinitely more valuable than shallow fluency in three. It's all about depth over breadth, mastery over multiplicity. At the end of the day, this all comes down to one single fundamental idea: clarity is power. This right here is the foundation for any real solution. It really is as simple and as powerful as that. If weak, muddled language leads to shallow, brittle thinking, then the reverse has to be true too. The disciplined practice of using clear language directly creates the habit of clear thinking. It's the cause, not just the effect. And why does this matter so much? Because this isn't just some academic exercise. A society that can't clearly define and articulate its own problems will be fundamentally incapable of solving them. Look, emotion can get people moving, and pride can be inspiring, but only clear, precise thought can design the institutions, the policies, and the systems that actually work. So, we'll leave you with this question to chew on. How does your language, the words you have, and maybe more importantly the ones you don't, shape the world you see and the ideas you can build? Take a closer look. The answer might just change the way you think about, well, everything.